The topic that I'm going to speak on today, potential for greatness, transforming the domestic private sector. In my presentation today, I take my cue from the theme of this year's Excellence in Business Forum, Choose to be Great Instead of Big, and more specifically from Mr. Burlingham's insightful book, Small Giants, Companies That Choose to be Great Instead of Big. It seems to me that if companies are to be great, then it will be extremely helpful if the environment for doing business is great, and if the attitude of policymakers and the population towards business is also great. In other words, I believe that there's an important nexus between great companies and great countries. I believe further that this country is quite capable of leveraging this nexus for faster national development. Over the next few minutes, I elaborate on these ideas. Most, if not all, business persons present here today belong to the domestic private sector. This is so whether your business is small, medium, or large. Let us explore some aspects of this segment of the Trinidad and Tobago economy. The domestic private sector is small when compared to the other two sectors of this economy. That is, the foreign private sector, which is mainly involved in energy-related business, and the public sector. The domestic private sector is small in terms of the size of investments in the domestic economy, net foreign exchange earnings, exports, and in some other respects as well. However, it is large in terms of its contribution to employment, providing jobs for about 72% of those employed. The public sector is the second largest sector, accounting for approximately 26%. The foreign private sector ranks third with the remaining 2%, as it is the most capital-intensive of the three sectors. This historical structure has been a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it has meant that FDI, foreign direct investment, and public sector investments have historically been the main drivers of this economy, giving rise to relatively good incomes for most of us, most of the time. However, therein lies a major challenge. For if FDI is weak and the public sector investment falters for whatever reason, then the economy goes into recession. In a sense, the weakness of these two major players is what largely explains the overall shrinking of economic activity in 2009 and 2010. It also helps to explain the still weak domestic economy. It stands to reason, then, that if the domestic private sector is made much stronger, then it can bring a better balance to this economy. In other words, a stronger domestic private sector can play a far more important and complementary role in economic growth and development of this economy. I say complementary since I'm not arguing for a diminution of the other two drivers of growth, but for a far more dynamic and stronger domestic private sector. Indeed, partnering of domestic companies with foreign investors or public sector companies is a legitimate way to grow domestic capacity. In this sense, recent events such as the Caribbean Investment Forum and the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association Trade and Investment Conference are positive initiatives in building capacity, and you heard the minister expand on those. I view then the domestic private sector as the third pillar of growth whose potential has not been adequately explored. As such, in the language of Mr. Burlingham, our distinguished guest speaker, the domestic private sector is a giant, still to be awakened. Our intention at Republic Bank in jointly hosting this forum with the BDC is to do precisely this. It is to help awaken this giant through training, networking, and exposure to best practices, all of which should expose our companies to limitless possibilities. The goal of all of us must be to build greater and dynamic local businesses that can transform this economy beyond oil and gas. This country needs to be more reliant on domestic investment such that neither the drying up of foreign direct investment nor inertia in public sector investment leads to major economic contraction. If our companies are great, then our country will be great. Great companies underlie great countries. One just has to look at examples such as Samsung of Korea and Temasek of Singapore. I can also add Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. But I would not add that. But the road to greatness depends importantly on a vision and a strategic plan that key stakeholders can buy into. The recently established Economic Development Board needs to develop a holistic vision and strategy which encompasses all the resources of this country. Work has already been done in this area. It needs to be updated and operationalized as soon as possible. As a country, we take too long to get things done. The good news is that Trinidad and Tobago does not have to start from scratch. We already have a few locally owned companies in energy, manufacturing, finance, and other service sectors. And many of you, small, medium, or large, are present here today as well. These have all demonstrated some level of success or greatness, if you will, to borrow Mr. Burlingham's word. But there are as well dozens of small and medium-sized companies doing business in a very wide and diversified range of activities. In terms of activities, not necessarily the size, we indeed can speak of some diversification in this economy. The problem is that most of these companies, especially the small, medium, lack the ambition in some cases, but I'm sure not those of you here today, skills and support to make the difference that is contemplated. The immediate challenge then, as I see it, is to deliberately target an expansion of these existing companies. This country has several attributes which should serve to motivate other businesses to become world-class, not necessarily world-size, in the spirit of what I understand Mr. Burlingham to be saying. According to the Ministry of Energy, Trinidad and Tobago is the #1 exporter of ammonia, methanol, LNG, etc. to the United States. The fact is that business in Trinidad and Tobago has a good base from which to operate and to expand. We have a relatively high standard of living with a per capita income of some say 15,000 just over in 2010. According to the UN's HDI report, we ranked 59 out of 169 countries. This country is surrounded by several large countries with which we have trade agreements. This says that we are located in a part of the world, in a good part of the world, not only to grow our individual business, but to use it as a springboard for outward expansion. It is this action which will build the third pillar, the domestic private sector. What I'm arguing then is that the domestic private sector must be encouraged to play a greater role in complementing the foreign private sector and the public sector. However, there must be a clear strategy for this sector in the policy framework. The task is not as difficult as it might first appear, given that some work has already been done and there's a wide range of existing businesses already blazing some trails. In conclusion, there's little doubt that Trinidad and Tobago businesses of all sizes possess good potential for greatness. A small country of 5,128 square kilometers is punching above its weight already, but more needs to be done. Greater focus, greater support, and a vision are necessary ingredients. In this context, Republic Bank is pleased to be able to partner with the BDC and Mr. Burlingham in mounting this forum with you today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.